Alrighty. So hello again and welcome. My name is Jasmine. I'm an admission counselor with the USC Leonard Davis School of Gerontology, and today we will be focusing on putting your coursework into practice, focusing mainly on internships. So an internship, the way that we like to define it, is an opportunity for students to develop professional goals and experience in a gerontological setting. We have the belief that a structured work experience enhances the student's instructional program. Students will then use these specific internships to develop professional goals, as well as being involved in organizational environments to help the students learn and refine in their career goals. So today I am joined by Anna Nguyen. She is our Director of Internship Training at the USC Leonard Davis School of Gerontology. In her own words, she is a matchmaker for gerontology students and aging service organizations, as she works to place and assist undergraduate as well as graduate students who want to work with and serve the older adults in their internships. Anna has earned a Bachelor of Science and a Master of Arts and Clinical Doctorate in occupational therapy, as well as a Master of Science in Gerontology, all from the University of Southern California. So thank you, Anna, for setting aside some time to join us and having this conversation. So I would like to start by giving you the floor to share a bit more information about yourself, as well as your role, as well as to provide a little bit of insight into our internship programs.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. It's really an honor to be here and speak with all of you today. So once again, my name is Dr. Anna Nguyen. I am your Director of Internship Training. And so if you're a master's student, there's a high likelihood that you will need to do an internship, but it really depends on the program that you're in. So some programs require it, some of the programs, it's an elective. So you really want to make sure you talk to your academic advisor to make sure that you are on the right path for you. And I'm really excited to talk about internships because this is really where you can take all of the concepts and theories that you learned in the classroom and see how does it show up in the real world, right? So is it exactly as they say? Are the case studies the splitting image of what it is that you see in the real world, or are there some differences and some issues and some challenges? And so that's what I'm here to talk about is when you're in your program, what is it that you can expect when doing an internship?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Anna. So with that, I'd like to just kind of dive right in. I know you mentioned a moment ago that, there are certain benefits to doing an internship. So can you go a little bit into detail about what those specifically might be for an undergraduate or for a master's student?
Oftentimes when I talk about internships, I do make a distinction between volunteering and interning somewhere. When you volunteer, usually you're taking your time and your energy and you do essentially whatever the organization needs. So they delegate a task to you and you do it almost whether you like to or not. But generally, they might try and find something that you like, but it's really connected to the organization's mission. On the other hand, when you're doing an internship, it's really to help develop yourself professionally, to be able to enhance or allow you to gain skills. And it should be a mutually beneficial experience. And so with our gerontology internships, you are gaining hands-on experience working in aging services. And the intention is for you to be able to build those skill sets, but also start to enhance your professional network. And some of you may have working experience. Some of you may have worked part-time, maybe over the summer, but some of you, this may be your first experience in a professional setting. So it allows for you to really strengthen good working habits. And so you can do an internship informally, but the internship course that you might be taking, Gero 591, that is a structured internship experience. So depending on whether you take it in the fall or spring, which would be 15 weeks, or the summer, which would be 12 weeks. The biggest difference is that I am there as your advocate to help make sure that your learning and the focus of your activities and tasks during your internship are really geared towards helping enhance your development as a gerontologist.
Wonderful. So I'm glad you mentioned that a moment ago, specifically with doing an internship within the field of gerontology. Is that a prerequisite? Like, do students have to do an internship in the field of gerontology? And then if that is the case, what kind of facilities can they do their internships at?
It depends on what degree you're getting, whether or not you will be doing an internship. And if you are doing an internship, our requirement is that you complete at least 16 units. Generally, that's 4 courses or 4 classes in gerontology. And that's really to ensure that you have a strong foundation in gerontology prior to taking the internship course. So I sometimes like to mention the reticular activating system. So let's say you are about to buy a car, we'll say like a white Tesla, and you have an eye on a white Tesla because there are all of these rebates going around right now. And then all of a sudden on the road, you're going to see all of these white Teslas. It's not that they weren't there before, it's that now you're primed, right? You've primed the pump and you start to see these things. And that's what we need your coursework to do. Your coursework helps you to be able to identify, ooh, I heard of that theory or that concept, or there's something similar or different to what I learned in my classes. And so you need to be able to have that classwork in order to really get the most from your internship experience. I'll also say that students, as you're going through your courses, it's a good idea to have a clear understanding or to start to tease apart what are your aspirations professionally within aging services, and being able to clearly articulate what it is that you would like to do also helps with the placement process, because that allows for us to help identify sites that would be a strong match for what it is that you aspire to do.
Wonderful. That was a fantastic example, Anna. Thank you. So I do just want to backpedal a little bit. I skipped over this question, but I did also just want to ask which degrees specifically require an internship. I know that could be a little helpful with helping students break down which roads to pursue.
Yeah, and it's also important to know that I'm not the only person who handles internships. So if you are in the process of wanting to find a placement or looking to complete your internship course in the coming semester, you might hear from Edward Shee. He's kind of my right-hand person, and sometimes I call him the other half of my brain. So he helps just to make sure that we attend to all of our students' needs. Most of the students are non-nutrition students. So we make that distinction because I believe we now have 4 degrees that have to do with nutrition. And so if your degree has the word dietetic or nutrition in the degree, then you will not be working with me, you'll be working with Jeannie Wakamatsu. So that's a whole different set of internships, and the requirements are different. How many internships you do, the duration, those are all different. But for those degrees that do require an internship, right now, it's the MSG, the Masters of Science in Gerontology, all of our dual degrees. So that means if it's a Masters of Science in Gerontology with another degree, so if you're doing a Master's in Social Work, Health Administration, Public Administration, you're doing your MBA, you're getting your JD, any of those dual degrees, you will need to do Gero 591. And then I believe right now the EMSADA, the Applied Technology and Aging Master's degree, does have a requirement. I'm not sure if that's being revisited, but you should talk to your academic advisor to make sure. And then there's a couple of degrees as well where it's an elective. So talk with your academic advisor. So it may not be a required part of your degree, but if you feel like it's beneficial, especially if you're transitioning from another discipline and you really want to have a structured experience to help enhance the likelihood that you'll have a position kind of waiting for you once you graduate, taking Gero 591 can really help with that process. So you can ask your academic advisor whether an elective, whether it can be an elective if it's not a required part of your course.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. So whether it be for the MSG or for Masada or as an elective decision on the student's end, do the students have to find their own internship? And if so, what resources might be available to help them in their search?
That's a great question. And by and large, most students do not find their own internship. So you can if you want to, but most students will utilize the organizations that we have partnered with. And so we have a lot of established partnerships with organizations. A lot of them are kind of in LA proper around USC. So if you don't have a car, there are sites that are a part of USC. There are, clinics and labs that are part of USC, some that are in the surrounding areas that you may be able to get to by public transit. But some of them are a little bit further out. And so being able to have a car or have reliable transportation could be good. And so what we do is we ask our affiliates in, the semester before if they're able to host interns in that coming semester, and they create slots in our database. And so 3 to 6 months before your internship. So if you're thinking of taking it, let's say in the spring, that would be late September, early October, is when you actually need to start thinking about, I'm doing my internship. What does that look like? And then for the summer and fall, we place those at the same time, and that would be in late February, early March. And there's a wish list process that students can participate in. So they would be able to go into our database, take a look at those prospective sites, and they would identify 5 to 10 sites that they want to be placed at for their internship. And so the majority of students, by and large, go through that wish list process. Every once in a while, there is a student that misses that process, and so they have to be individually placed. And so they would still be connected with different affiliates, partners that we have, but it's a slightly different process. If a student wants to find their own site, they're welcome to explore on their own. We do recommend 2 months or more to set up that partnership, just because it takes a little while. So if that's something that's of interest to you, make sure you plan ahead, communicate with myself and Edward early. And there are several requirements. One is that at least 80% of your internship needs to be something with older adults. So planning, coordinating, providing services, programs, any kind of project. So it could be immediately impacting older adults where you interact with them on a regular basis, but it could also be something like Alzheimer's research, where you might not see older adults, but you know that your work is contributing to their lives. So that's the first thing, is the majority of your time has to be spent doing work that impacts older adults. The second has to do with your preceptor, and that's a fancy term that we use for your supervisor or your boss. And that needs to be a professional staff person who is fluent in English, and they need to have at least 2 years of experience working in aging services. They don't need to have a master's degree in a human services related field, but it's preferred. It's not required, but it's always great if they have that. And then once you're able to identify an organization, you find someone who's essentially willing to host you, you would send me the name of the organization, their name, their position, their email, their phone number. And then I would need to have some conversations, both to set up that affiliation, but also to make sure that your preceptor is well equipped to understand the role and responsibilities that they have as your preceptor. So it might be the same person, it might be 2 different people. And so that's kind of a long answer to, most students don't go through that process. They utilize the partners that we have already found. We check to make sure that students have a quality experience, that it's meaningful, it's fulfilling for them, but it's mutually beneficial, right? Supports the organization and also helps the students to grow and develop as a gerontologist. But sometimes students have a very specific niche that they want to go into, so they can certainly find their own site if they'd like to.
Wonderful. Thank you again for explaining that. So I did have another kind of follow-up question to what you were just discussing. So for students who may not have that specific niche that they know they want to get into, how would you, I would guess, advise someone who is kind of on the fence about deciding just one thing to turn their focus on?
Well, the challenge is that it's not something that anybody can really decide for you. Sometimes when I talk with students, I use food analogy. So I describe figuring out what you want to do with older adults or in aging services is like eating at a buffet. So you can hear someone describe the food, they can provide all the details. Ooh, these are the pros and cons. But until you taste it yourself, until you do it yourself, you actually won't know whether, let's say, working directly with older adults or groups of older adults or research or advocacy, you won't really know if it's a good fit for you until you try it, right? And so oftentimes I will share with students, you really want to start figuring out what helps you feel fulfilled, right? So some folks want to build relationships with their clients or their patients. So they want to connect with the older adults, their loved ones. They want to understand the problem, find the solution, help them get access to resources, develop a relationship over time. However, there's a limit to how many people you can actually work with in a given, day, week, month. So there's other folks who think, okay, I don't want to impact, let's say, dozens of people, but I want to impact hundreds or thousands of people. But if you're impacting that many people, you won't be able to see them on a daily basis, right? So you have your core reason for advocacy or fundraising or research, and you find fulfillment in that immense impact that you can have without necessarily seeing those older adults every day, right? So no one can really tell you what to focus on or how to choose, but it's a combination of you just have to go there and do it. And then see when you do that work, how do you feel? Do you feel like this is aligned with your beliefs or how it is that you want to have an impact on the world around you? And that will help you to grow and develop as a professional. And just realize that if you pick one thing, you think, oh, this sounds like a good idea, I want to do that. So you do it for a while and then you realize, you know what, I thought I wanted to be able to impact individuals and build relationships, but I really want to like kind of move and shake the world. Then you can transition as a professional, right? So you're not locked in. Sometimes students feel like if I pick the one thing that I will set my professional path that way and I can't break from that. And that is certainly not true. You can always evolve your focus as a gerontologist. And so do your best to figure it out, but just know that you have your whole professional career ahead of you. So you can certainly evolve. You can evolve over time like Pokemon.
Perfect. So with that, I know just given the state that the world has been in for the last few years, remote learning has become something that's gotten really popular, not only within our university, but throughout the country. And I know, as you were saying a moment ago, it's once you're on campus and you're interacting not only with yourself, but with your fellow peers, it can be a little easier to make those connections. But if a student is a remote learner, do they have to complete an internship while they're doing the program online? And if so, what are kind of the differences with that?
Yeah. So again, your internship requirement depends on your academic program. There are students who complete an internship and they're doing their degree not on campus. So being on campus or being remote or completing your degree virtually, those two things are not correlated. You have to figure out what your degree requirements are. And getting your gerontology degree at USC in the United States, your internship experience will be in the United States. Sometimes we get questions. Even if a student plans to serve a population that resides in a different country, you plan to move after graduation, you want to focus on international aging, your placement is going to be stateside, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean in Los Angeles, right? So it could be Northern California, it could be all the way down in San Diego. We have had internship sites in Florida, in Massachusetts. Some of these sites are in person. So they actually want our students there. So that could be for a student who's doing a summer internship where they may be able to help you find housing and accommodations. Sometimes it's remote and sometimes it's hybrid where you're completing a majority of your internship remotely, right? So doing all of the groundwork and then maybe you fly out to that site for a site visit or for a particular event, right? They might have a conference that you would support. And so those individuals who are used to virtual academic experiences, I lovingly call it Zoom University. I think there's a lot of students who went through that. Sometimes they can get a little bit too comfortable with kind of a work from home or study from home kind of experience. And you think, oh, okay, you know what? If I keep my head down, I do the work, that is going to be enough. But unfortunately, every organization has its own structure. They have their own way of operating. And it usually requires that you spotlight or you showcase the work that you do in front of your supervisor, your preceptor in the internship situation, but your colleagues, your boss's boss. And if you're not used to water cooler talk, you're not used to working and connecting with coworkers on a regular basis, kind of the small conversations that help to build rapport, that can actually be detrimental to you professionally, right? So having the training and doing the work, that of course is important. You can't not do that. You have to do that. But there's also a lot of emotional intelligence that's required in order to make sure that you are setting yourself up professionally. And that's something that we talk about in Gero 591. So we look at networking and we look at job hunting. And actually, we do a section on self-exploration as well. And so if a student were looking for a site outside of California, it's the same as I explained before, at least 80% of their internship experience would need to be related to planning, coordinating, providing some kind of services or programs that impact older adults. They need to identify a preceptor who's fluent in English, has at least 2 years experience working in aging services, and then making sure that I'm in contact with them so we can really explore whether or not it's a good fit. And sometimes the site might sound great, and then I talk to the preceptor and the preceptor is not clear on what the student would do at the organ, like, okay, they would just shadow. I'm like, oh, well, what other opportunities are there? And the preceptor can't articulate, and that's not a good sign, right? So if you are looking for your own site, especially if it's one that's not in Los Angeles or in California, really making sure that you are checking out the site and checking the individuals who would be working directly with you so that they have your best interests in mind as well, right? Because it's mutually beneficial. They benefit, they've got your passion, your energy to move forward their work, but also you as a student need to benefit. So you want to make sure that they're, they see your short-term, but also your long-term goals, right? I know the pandemic has kind of changed our way of thinking, like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do in a year, 2 years, 5 years, but you should have some idea, and you want to share that with the people that you're doing your experience with, whether it's in California or in another state, and making sure that they're on that same able to see the same things, so that they're looking for opportunities for you, whether it's interacting with individuals, having interviews or meetings, or participating in different projects that help to grow and develop you the way that you envision for yourself.
Wonderful. So it sounds as though, the programs themselves, completing an internship is such a multifaceted undertaking. Could you just talk a little bit about what you think, what aspect of the program is most difficult for students, given any feedback that you've gotten from them or your own experiencing of witnessing students complete their internships? What would you say is the most difficult part?
As with many things in life, communication is the most important. It's critical, and it is also the most challenging. So at the very beginning, it starts off with articulating your own interests and aspirations. So I mentioned the buffet concept of you have to try a little bit first before you can really say what it is that you like or don't like, or what it is that you want to really enhance in your gerontology experience, so that when you're stepping out into the working world, that is really what you bring to the field. So making sure that those interests and those aspirations are enfolded into your internship, in your learning goals. And then there's also a lot of other connections that are challenging for students. Like, for example, they might need to follow up with their preceptor to get, let's say, timesheets approved, or to move their documentation workflow along. But what method do you use to follow up? How often do you remind them? And students are always concerned, oh, I feel like a little bit of a nag, but I need to make sure that I get these back. What do I do, right? So again, communication. If a colleague asks you to support a really interesting project, but it's not one of your learning goals, what do you do? Do you take that opportunity? Do you leave it because, no, I'm supposed to focus on these are my learning goals? When do you talk with your preceptor, right? So all of these kind of different things that you would have to navigate, they're not as clear cut as they might be in an academic setting where the structure is already kind of there for you. So these nuances of emotional intelligence are incredibly important. And then when you're getting set up with a site, or you're talking with your preceptor or your colleagues, the hybrid, or the opportunity to be in person but also virtual, that has posed some challenges as well. Does your preceptor prefer connecting in person or virtual meetings like on Zoom or Microsoft Teams? Do they want phone calls? Do they want emails or text message or Slack, or a combination? Is there a best time of day? Is there a best day of the week to reach them? And so some of these challenges, it may seem maybe like small potatoes, but I find that because communication, it runs throughout your internship, not only with setting up your internship, but getting the most from your internship experience. Sometimes in the first progress report that students have with me, I always ask them, is there anything that you've observed or experienced that doesn't sit quite right with you? Because sometimes students are hesitant. They don't want to say anything that might impact their grade, or well, I'm not an employee, I don't know if I can speak up. But that's the difference, is in the academic setting, there's a lot of structure. And there's already kind of formal pathways where you can speak up and say something. But when you're out in the working world, you really have to trust your intuition and trust your gut. And so being able to speak up and kind of knowing where to go, or who to speak with, or how to go about it in a tactful way can be really challenging. And so one of the pros is, if you do Gero 591, I'm here to help support you in that process. And there's multiple checkpoints to help make sure that you're having a high quality, fulfilling experience that's meaningful, and that you're also, as best as possible, utilizing your training and skills that you've developed throughout your academic program, and kind of seeing, we're like riding a bicycle. So you're trying to take off the training wheels and see, like, can I actually ride a bike on my own, or do I need some more supports? Do I need to practice some more? And so I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges, is how do you talk effectively and efficiently with the people around you? Sometimes preceptors like to hear about your process and your journey. They want to hear about the details and the experience, but others are really focused on deliverables. What are the results? And one is not better than the other, but the way that you effectively communicate with those kind of supervisors is going to be different. And so I remember when I first started working, I tend to be very detail oriented. And I started telling my boss all the details, because I was like, oh, he's going to want to hear everything I've done. And he did not want, he was a big picture thinker. He just wanted to see the big picture. Did you get what we need to get done? Okay, great, let's move on. And it was a lesson for me that, oh, like I was losing him, right? I wasn't able to hold his attention, but also, I mean, our time is, everyone's time is valuable. So how is it that you can best communicate in-person setting, virtual setting, hybrid setting with whoever it is, your preceptor, your colleagues, the older adults that you work with? And that, I would say, is the most challenging part of the internship experience that I like to draw attention to for students, because then they realize how important it is to really think about and then work on articulating in a clear, concise way so that they can help get the best experience possible.
Wonderful. And it's great to hear that, JARO 591 kind of exists as that kind of safety net for students to be able to explore their interests, but within the confines of, again, that class. So with that being said, can you just tell us a little bit more about what the structure of JARO 591 is? Like, is there a seminar that's involved, and how do students allocate the kind of workload that comes along with the internship in their curriculum?
There's back to the buffet. There's a lot of different opportunities for students, and the challenge is that even as a master's student, there are some master's students that they're straight from undergrad. And so depending on how you approached your academics, it could be that you did not work at all. You just focused on your classes, you got good grades, and that's really your focus. And so you may not have worked over the summer, and the semester prior to their internship course, I request that students have a mock interview with me, and some students say, this is the first time I've had an interview. And that it makes me hold my breath a little bit, because that should not be the first time that students are interviewing, but that's what happens in our day and age, where academics can really be the calling card that folks believe is necessary. And so I say it's a buffet because sometimes there's like, you want to eat the, pizza and fries. Sometimes you want to eat the sushi or the whatever else is there, right? So depending on what you've done with your resume, with your networking, with your interviewing skills, with the process of job hunting, the course does have a lot of flexibility with allowing you to be involved in and spend time delving into those different topics to the level that you feel like you need. So the way that the course is, is time that's allocated for your internship site. So if you're taking 4 units of 591, that's 240 hours, which is an average of 20 hours a week for 12 weeks. So the fall and the spring, the semesters are actually 15 weeks long. So there's a little bit of buffer time, but the summer semester is exactly 12 weeks. So that means a consistent 20 hours or more throughout the entire semester. I usually do recommend that students front load their hours so that they get, they have some peace of mind that if they get sick or have a personal emergency, that they're able to accrue all of their required hours by the end of the semester. So that's a portion of their coursework, and there's points associated with the documentation component of tracking that experience. And then there's also another component, which are interactive exercises. So they follow along 5 different topics. So self-exploration, networking, resumes, interviewing, and job hunting. And those are different topics that students have shared they have some struggles with, or they have challenges with feeling like they are well prepared to really make that transition between the academic world and the working world. And so there are different exercises and all of those topics, and it's essentially a la carte. So let's say you've spent a lot of time working on your resume and you feel really confident that it is where it needs to be. I still recommend you listen to the videos while you're washing the dishes or folding laundry as a refresher, but maybe you don't do those exercises because maybe your time and energy is better spent doing mock interviews or working on in real life networking to strengthen those muscles. And so there's a lot of different opportunities for students to be able to develop themselves in a personal way to prepare themselves for that transition, and then professionally in their internship experience with their preceptor, with their colleagues, with the older adults that they're working with. And so that's, I would say in a nutshell, hopefully that all made sense. That's what the internship course is really about. It's to provide them with a chance to step out and actually be a gerontologist in aging services, but also supporting them with exercises to really help them think. Some students haven't taken the time to really explore themselves or how it is they can best prepare. And so I tell students, this is a great time to really just experiment because it's a safe space. There's really nothing on the line. I'm not offering you a job. And so if you say something and you think, oh, I do not like the way that sounded, right? When you're introducing yourself or you're just processing and thinking about things, it's an opportunity for all of us to learn and reflect and explore together. And things are really changing out in the world of looking for a job, right? So I'm sure folks have thought about like, ooh, AI, how can AI help me with my resume or with my cover letter or with making sure that, everything that I put out is the best that it can be? Can I use artificial intelligence to help me with that? Are organizations, recruiters, are they using AI to scan or, so all of these questions and conversations, I don't know that I have the answers to them, but this is an exploration that we have together to really do our best to make sure that you are the most prepared that you can be when you step out and you start your job hunt. So if you start it during the internship course, you can feel like you have that support and that safety net. And we do have class sessions most every week, not every week. And it goes as long as students have questions. So depending on the semester, depending on how filled with questions students are, sometimes it goes the full, 2 hours and 50 minutes. And sometimes I'm sharing my thoughts and perspectives. Students will post questions in the designated discussion board thread. We'll go through that. We'll have a discussion and maybe it's an hour or 2 hours. So it really depends on students. And that's to be of service to you, to get your questions answered, to feel like if there's a challenge that you're experiencing in your job hunting experience, or you've heard conflicting things, just to get more data points so that you can be prepared as you move forward.
Wonderful. And it's great again to hear that there is such a community around this internship program with yourself and with Edward. So it's great to hear that, you're there for the students like that. And I have a couple of other questions, but we do have a question that was submitted by one of our attendees that I think is is in line with what you were just mentioning. So the question is, can you switch internships if you end up not liking the one you are currently enrolled in?
Ooh, great question. And I will say it's kind of like when you apply for a job and you think, oh, this is great. And then you kind of have to work there for a while, right? So this is one of the reasons why I really strongly advocate for students to not start eating the buffet when they're in the internship course. Like start testing beforehand, because what you really want to do is figure out what do you want in your internship experience so that by the time you do the formal internship course, you're kind of honed in on, this is my niche, however you want to say it. This is the area of aging services that I want to make an impact in, because then the placement that you have is really aligned with where you want to go professionally. As part of the placement process, there is an interview. So we require an interview between the student and the site. And it's really a 12 to 15 week long experiment. So when we place, there's a lot of time and energy and resources going into placing students. And so when we place a student and you start your intern, so the semester begins, you've met with your preceptor, you've met all your colleagues, there may be challenges. And actually, I see that as really a growth opportunity. So there may be some instances where it really is a terrible fit, or let's say for whatever reason, the preceptor leaves and there's nobody else that can be the preceptor, we may need to place a student again, but I would say those are few and far between. I actually cannot recall a time that we pulled a student yeah, I can't recall time I've rolled a student. But it's usually working through interpersonal issues. So oftentimes what will happen is one of two things. One is there's interpersonal issues and they're not getting along with their preceptor or their colleagues. So the communication isn't strong, or they feel like they're just not getting along. And so it could be that I encourage the student to have a conversation and find a way to kind of mend that so that they're able to work together. It could be just a simple misunderstanding. And so it could be that I will have a conversation with both of them and kind of mediate and try and figure out what happened, right? So that's one type of reason why students may not want to continue on with their internship. Another is that they feel like the work that they're doing is not high quality, meaning going back to earlier on, I mentioned volunteering versus interning. So volunteer, they say, okay, go get coffee, go make copies, answer the phone. And it could be kind of these lower, maybe entry level tasks, but I would say maybe not getting coffee, but making copies. Like people at all ranks need to make copies of things, right? And they might need to file, or they might need to do data entry. And so sometimes it's a reframing to understand the reasons why you're doing that and how that fits into the bigger picture of what's happening. And sometimes it's kind of having a conversation with the preceptor to help them understand what is actually appropriate to assign to a student intern that's doing their gerontology internship with that organization. So that's part of the conversation that I have with them, especially with a new site. But, you know, every once in a while, if I feel like a site is starting to assign, or as I'm listening to what students are sharing, what it is that they're doing, if I feel like it's maybe not fully utilizing their internship training, then I will have a conversation with the preceptor and help identify some other tasks or responsibilities that could maybe go to the student that would help enhance their experience. I would say generally it's one of those two reasons, is interpersonal issues, or they feel like the work is not to their kind of their hope and their expectations for professional development. And so oftentimes there's ways that we can rectify that to allow for the student to complete their internship. I mentioned on occasion, sometimes something happens where it could be something happens to the preceptor, and we may replace the preceptor, but they stay at their site. And then on a very rare occasion, I would say in the however long I've been in this position, I would say I've been in this position maybe 8 or 9 years. It's happened fewer times than I can count on one hand, where we've actually placed a student at another site. So really, we want students to do the work ahead of time to identify what kind of impact do I want to make in gerontology and aging services. And we work to do our best to align the site and what they do with what it is you want to do, so that it's mutually beneficial. They benefit because you're excited, you want to be there, you'll put your passion towards helping them grow and develop, and then they in turn will help to shape you and contribute to your growth and development.
Wonderful. So
question.
So with that, since there is so much time invested in the student identifying what their long-term goals are, can you share a little bit more about where some of the former interns that you've worked with have found employment post-grad?
Yeah, there's a lot of sites, I would say. So let me put it into context, because I think it's important that we be transparent with what the experience of interning is like. And there's always this, the optimal situation is students are doing their degree, and towards the end, they've set themselves up so that once they graduate, they're employed, right? And I think everyone wants that. I don't think anybody wants to complete a degree and be like, oh my gosh, what am I doing for my employment? However, the reality of our internship sites are, some of them are not set up to hire. They see themselves as a training ground. So they think, okay, we have a really fertile experience. There's a lot of different things that students can do where they can help learn and grow and develop, but we don't have the capacity to hire people afterwards, right? And that's the reality, is you may not get hired at your internship site. However, a lot of internship sites have community partners that they work with that are serving the same clients or older adults that they are. And so if you have connections, you're working on a task force, or you're helping to put together a conference, that you may have connections with those community partners, and they may see the value that you're able to provide. And so we've had students that have been hired at brother sister organizations that are connected to our internship sites. That being said, we want our sites to hire our students as well. And there've been a variety of sites. So some of these, depending on what classes you've taken, you may have had some representatives from these organizations. And so they may have been guest speakers in your classes. So some may sound familiar, some may not. And so Archstone Foundation, they're a nonprofit foundation that they provide grants to help improve the health of older adults in older Californians, right? And so we've had a student hired there from his internship to be a program associate. The Buddhist Suchi Medical Foundation, they're a volunteer-based international organization. And so we've had a number of students hired there. They have a mobile clinic. So we've had some of our students hired after their internship to be a mobile clinic coordinator. Moving over towards elder law, so nursing home neglect, nursing home litigation, the law offices of Ben Yerushalmi. So if you're interested in elder abuse, nursing home litigation, or you're interested in getting your JD or going into elder law or advocacy in that way, we've had several students kind of follow and become a legal assistant going through that path. And then we've also had technology opportunities too. So Bell Age is a technology startup recently. Actually, this spring, she finished her internship and she got hired as a program associate right after that. We've also had a number of different senior living communities. So some of you know the Varial of Woodland Hills. They've hired a number of our students. Silverado Senior Living, Ensign Group. Ensign's a little tricky because the name of those communities don't have Ensign in the name. So their Ensign is they oversee a number of different post-acute care kind of communities, so assisted living, skilled nursing facilities, rehabilitative care. And so we've had several interns go kind of through their process of becoming an administrator in training and then becoming administrators at different communities. And then we also have at USC, the National Center on Elder Abuse. They have also had an intern, actually 2 interns, and then they have stayed on to become project specialists there. So a variety of different kinds of organizations.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm a member of the alumni of the university itself. So it's always fascinating to hear how the Trojan Network expands into so many different avenues. So thank you so much for sharing that sharing a little bit more about that. So right now, I would like to open the floor to any of our attendees to go ahead and type any questions that you do have in the Q&A section. And Anna, while we do wait for those, I did just want to ask, since you have been working for the School of Gerontology for as long as you have, I did just want to ask what your favorite memory of working at the university has been.
That's a great question. I would say it actually is a throwback, but hopefully will come in the future, is prior to the pandemic, one of the initiatives that we really started up was to have in-person fairs. So actually that background that you have behind you, that's actually the middle of the courtyard, but we would have our internship fair towards in the area where it's covered. And so it was essentially, it's a fair, and they have them on Truesdale, but we would have them on, in our courtyard. And so sometimes students would come in and out, but it was a really great opportunity for students to be able to connect with our community partners. And I'm really looking for win-win-win solutions, right? I want the student to win because they have opportunities. I want sites to win because they are connecting with students that they maybe otherwise would not have had a chance to talk with. And then we as a school win because we are really helping to develop future cohorts of aging professionals who are supporting aging services. We all are aging if we are so fortunate to age. But I think for me, it's the memories of I guess it's like there's a lot of adrenaline pumping for those events because these individuals are tabling. You want to make sure that students are coming and spending time, but it's really being able to kind of overhear conversations where individuals feel like they're really connecting and really having enhanced opportunities. So we have that internship fair. Usually it's in late October and late March aligned with our placement process. But we have some new initiatives. So that's why I'm hoping that we have more opportunities to have these great experiences. So we have an involvement and career fair coming up. So we had this last year, but we're hoping to have it again in, ideally every semester. And it hopefully will be an in-person event as well. But some challenges there because we're, I think, transitioning to being back in person. But that is an opportunity. So once you've got your academic calendar set and you think, oh, I have these little blocks of time, what can I do? You can get involved with different organizations. So this would be a volunteer experience, maybe an informal internship experience. And then it's a career fair because not only you might be looking for a part-time job, but our hope is also to support our alumni network, which is sometimes you graduate, you have a job, and you maybe don't like your job as much as you thought you would, right? Or you feel like, okay, I'm a memory care coordinator and I like memory care, but maybe I want to become an administrator. I want to do something slightly different. And so that also is a way to support our alumni to allow for them to see what's available and get reconnected with us, but also be connected with our partner organization. So that would be another type of fair that we might have. And so hopefully more good memories to come.
Wonderful. That's exciting. And I do hope that we are able to transition more into live events because like you were saying, it's really exciting to have students, be able to be here on campus and to be able to communicate with them in person. So we are running a little bit short on time. So what I will do is for any follow-up questions that students may have, please feel free to reach out to Dr. Anna Quinn on your own. I'll leave her contact information here as well. And then you can also feel free to reach out to myself or any of the other admission counselors in our office. But I would again like to take the time to go ahead and thank Dr. Nguyen for being here with us today. We really appreciate not only your passion, but also your excitement for helping students and just being able to be such a strong voice here in the community at the USC Leonard Davis School of Gerontology. So thank you everyone for attending. And again, this recording will be posted live on our website a little bit later following the end of our webinar series. Thank you so much, and everybody have a great rest of your day.